Welcome back to another session. I hope you are well. And in the session I covered previously, I talked about diet and how what you eat plays a part in your well being. It plays a part in not just how you feel, but actually how your body functions. And I made a case for the importance of choosing carefully the right type of food, eating in the right quantity, and also eating in the right frequency in terms of timing. I also put forward a position which is that if you were to eat the right things, you will have the right level of energy, and you will have the delivery of that energy to the right parts of the body uh, when they need it. Now, in today's session, I want to talk about something slightly different. And if you recall, I am bringing to a close one of the chapters of this whole conversation about conquering depression and also understanding um, depression. Now, we understand and you understand, and I hope that I'm not wrong in my assumption about you, but most people understand, perhaps I should use a better way of making a statement. Most people recognize and understand that we get energy from food. We've been told that for many years, right from when we were young. And we've also seen and lived, and therefore have an idea that energy comes from food. Food is energy. We go for a run and we feel tired and fatigued, and we have a drink or we eat food and we feel rejuvenated. So we know that energy comes um, by the careful selection of the type of food we eat. Some of the food will give us short-term gain, but certainly ensure that we get long-term pain. By choosing the right diet, we minimize any short-term gain and we maximize the long-term gain. We get energy from food, but in today's session, I want to talk about a concept that is fairly old, but not necessarily well uh, understood, and definitely not in the mainstream. We get energy from food, but we also get energy from light. And so in today's session, I want to talk about light and how light has an effect on your well-being, but particularly how light and the right type of light and the energy created through light can boost your well-being and minimize the risk of depression. Now, many people are not aware of the word brevetarians. Brevetarians are people who do not eat food, and they simply get their energy and their nutrition from light, particularly from the sun, um, supplemented by other means. In any case, the key question in today's session is, how do we get energy from light? If this is possible, and how can we minimize and how can I minimize the risk of depression by using light? Well, most people are aware of what we call incident radiation or infrared radiation. We believe the sun produces energy because it does, and some of that energy is infrared. But before I go into the light and the energy source and all of that, let me take a step back, since we are talking about a way of boosting and optimizing our health. Water plays an essential role in our lives. We know that the universe is primarily filled with water. The human body is predominantly water. As a matter of fact, muscles in the body is 60% water. The cells are filled with water, surrounded by water. All of the molecules in the muscles, if you were to combine and add sum all of them, you find actually about 99% of all the molecules in our body and in the muscles is water. So water is a part of our being. We've been taught for many years that bulk water is H2O. You know that, I know that, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. I learned that very early. most people were told if you mix 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen, you get water. And that water occupies 3 different phases: vapor, liquid, or solid. 3 distinct phases. Many of you have actually seen, and you've felt, you've tried, you've even tasted the water in those states. If you're cooking in the kitchen, some of that water gets converted to vapor, and you can smell it, you can feel it in your nostrils. You drink normal water, so you know liquid form of water, and also you've actually seen ice. Some of you have actually gone ice skating. Some people have actually gone to a point of even having ice baths. So we know ice exists. We know water occupies those 3 states. We know if you actually keep water in the gas or vapor state and cover it and trap that vapor, it condenses back into liquid. And if you drop the temperature of the water to the right level, after a period of time, the liquid water forms into solid. And you can repeat the process in the reverse direction, and water just simply moves from one state to another. Now, in today's session, I want to say, and I want to introduce a concept that most people are not familiar with, but I think this concept is key for those who particularly suffer from depression. And that concept is that water also exists in a different phase. Yes, there are 3 phases of water as we are taught. But what if I said to you that that information is not necessarily incorrect, but it is incomplete, and that there is a 4th phase, and the water in the 4th phase is not H2O, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, but H3O2, 4th phase water. Some other people call it exclusion zone water. Now, let me not mince my words. This is not a concept that I have invented, and it's certainly not a concept that I believe that I am best to address. Dr. Jared Pollock is the one who's actually pioneered and developed this concept and made it more mainstream. I will talk about him in more detail in the session that follows, because I think his work has been exceptional. You see, in life, one of the things we have to learn how to do is seek and search for ways to make life less painful. Life is suffering, but if we can minimize the suffering between point A and point B, it means we can have it a little bit of, you might call, the blissful experience in the midst of the suffering, and therefore we have something to contend with. It becomes more of an adventure. But if life is such much of a suffering and everything seems to be pushing against you, especially for those who suffer mental health issues or depression, it's not unusual to find that people choose the path of least resistance. Now, we start with the body, which is how I started this session. I said at the start of this series that we are spiritual beings. We have a mind, we live in a physical body. So we live on 3 levels of, you might say, consciousness. We are spirits. We're not going through a spiritual experience. We are spirits. But spirits cannot exist in human form, and therefore we reside and we are housed in a physical garment we call our bodies. And there's a bridge between our physical state and our spiritual state, something that allows us to differentiate ourselves from other life forms. We call that an intellect. And how we use the intellectual faculties determine our emotional state. As part of our intellectual faculties, we have imagination and how we use our mind. So spiritual beings living in physical bodies who have minds. That separates us from other life forms. Animals can only operate based on instinct and their genetic codes. Human beings have free will. We have a mind. We can create our environment, and we can move ourselves in the direction of that new creation. Now, I say all of that to make a point, which is, if you think about water and if you think about light, these are things that are freely available for most people, especially in the West. Yes, in other parts of the world, water is not in abundance. If we generate energy from food, and I'm suggesting that we also generate energy from light through water, then it means that if you're suffering from depression, there are things that you can do, and I will be giving you about 6 or 7 that you can do to alleviate and minimize any suffering on the physical plane, and therefore maximize your overall well-being. Now, at the end of this chapter, which is about the physical, I will move into the mental, intellectual part of depression, and then finally into the spiritual part of depression. I started with the physical because it's the easiest for us to solve and start with. You simply have to make some changes. And I'm hoping as I go through some of the way I live my life and some of the things that I do, that you realize that these are no different from wisdoms of the past and wisdoms of the ages that we may have forgotten about, but we need to get back into doing. Now, I found many years ago that whenever I found myself in a place where I was suffering, it was for one of many reasons. One was either I was resisting something mentally or emotionally, and that whatever I resisted seemed to persist. And therefore, if I let go, if I just let go and let God, or if I just relax, or if I just allow yourself to go with the flow of life, that the pain minimized or was minimized. Now, the suffering of life still remains, but the pain was reduced because I was not using all my energy and effort and focus to go against what may have been a natural phenomenon. That's the first. The second was that I found that in addition to resisting something, I had stopped doing things that I previously knew to be true. There's a saying that a chains of habit become too light to be felt until they become too heavy to be broken. The secret to your future is hidden in your daily routines and what you do daily. And what we do daily and continuously determines and decides who we become permanently. So whenever there is a pain coming into your life, you have changed either a habit, or you have forgotten either a habit, or you are doing something that is not habitual. And I always used to say to myself, well, stop and look around and identify what's new. For some of us, it could be simple as, I'm not breathing the way I should breathe every day. For some other people, it's I'm not connecting to the universe, my spirit, connecting to loved ones as I used to. Perhaps you're not doing your gratitude journals. You're not actually sending love to other people. And therefore, you stop the flow of energy. The rivers of love and the rivers of abundance and joy and prosperity and health has been stopped because you're not giving. Give and it shall be given back to you in good measures, pressed down and shaken together, running over. And that's the whole point, that a stream that is stopped from its flow stagnates and then becomes more poisonous as time goes by. And whenever you feel a resistance and you feel that something is no longer working, just check and make sure that the flow through you has not been hindered. Now, the third thing I observed was always that I stopped searching for ways to make life more meaningful. I held on to an old belief, and that old belief may have been necessary to get me through a point in my life, but it wasn't necessarily the tool for the next point in my life. You've heard me say this before. The knowledge you have has got you to where you are. And you need a new set of knowledge to get you to where you want to get to. So as you listen to this, perhaps the ideas are, I wouldn't use the word radical, but they're not conventional. They're things you're not used to. Don't throw the ideas away. It's best to file the ideas and think about whether possibly there could be some truth in what is being shared. We're spiritual beings. We live in a physical body, and we have an intellect. And as part of the intellect, we have a mind, and therefore our emotional state is regulated based on how we use our intellect. Depression in the physical plane often begins from not having the right energy, not having the opportunity to have that energy delivered to the right places, and sometimes you're spending too much energy than you create. And so in many ways your body is breaking down, it's not functioning as it should, and therefore your focus, rather than look to your destination and look towards your, you might say, your promised land, you're looking backwards towards the past, or you're looking inwards towards a pain, and that pain could be a physical pain, cancer, Alzheimer's, a loved one, an injury you might have, and all of these things, because they replay in our mind, we're able to then focus on these things, and wherever you focus on, your energy flows. Now, without imagination, we can pre-play the future that does not exist. But we can, using our memory, through our imagination, we can replay the past. So if you are in a physical state where you're not an optimal state, worry, doubt starts to breathe, it leads to anxiety, it leads to depression, and leads to frustration, and suddenly you find your body starts to break down. But it's all by virtue of the function of your mind. And therefore, my view is if you can get your physical body in an optimal state, it frees up so much time and energy for you to take that focus and look towards your promised land and think of things that are good reports, think of things that are you might say edible, or that edify the spirit, and therefore be optimistic despite whatever suffering you might be going through. Now, I started today's session and I talked about light, and then I talked about water. Let me connect the dots so you can see how this works. Now, before I do that, let me talk you through a few things that I think you might be aware of. There have been times, I would imagine in your case, as has been in my case, when I have maybe gone out and I've had a swim and I feel great afterwards. I've gone out to sat in the sun, and after a short while, either immediately or subsequently, I feel fabulous. And I can't explain what changed. Nothing, it wasn't something that I saw, it was just something that was in me. At peace with water, or at peace in the environment. Fourth phase water plays a role and minimizes the risk of depression for a number of reasons. And I'm going to speculate, but also I think this is supported by the evidence. Whenever we absorb light, say in the sun, your body converts ordinary water to fourth phase water inside the body. The cells around the body are filled with water. The cells around the body, the cells in the body, and the water around those cells function at best when they have the right type of water. We know bulk water, but bulk water is not the same as fourth phase water or exclusion zone water. We also know, as you might know, is that when we talk about H2O, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, that's a neutral state because you have hydrogen, which is positive, and oxygen, which is -2. So if you have 2 parts of hydrogen mixed with 1 part of negative oxygen -2, you have 2 plus -2 is 0. Water is neutral. Fourth phase water, on the other hand, is negatively charged. And part of the reason is because when the water in the cells absorb light or infrared energy, it causes a separation in the charge of the water, and one hydrogen atom or molecule is excluded. And as it does so, water changes from, effectively you start with H2O and it separates itself into OH and H. And by that separation, you have an exclusion zone. And that exclusion zone grows or it narrows, depending on how we live our lives. My speculation is those who have depression, particularly related to the physical side, have a much narrower exclusion zone. And that means most people who suffer any level of depression are in a state where their bodies are not negatively charged. Now, I should say something that I think is key. Perhaps I would expand on this in the sessions to follow. Our bodies, respectively, strive to be in a negative state. Now, this goes against the conventional positive thinking mantra. And I am not talking about the mental side now, I'm talking about just the physical side. If you were to look at your body and you looked at the cells in your body, about 60% of the cells in your body are covered with water. That water is exclusion zone water, and it is negatively charged. So 60% or so of the water in the body around the cells or in the cells is negatively charged. If you were to combine that with what we call the extracellular parts of the body, you find that there's another 20% which is negatively charged. So overall, the body has about 80% or more negative charge. When we urinate and when we exhale or when we sweat, we are producing and we are shedding protons, positive charges. And therefore, by the act itself, in addition to the 80% of negative charge of the body, whenever we push out or push away any products, exhaling, sweating, urination, we are getting rid of protons and positive charges. So you can actually say that the body has a negative charge of between 80 and 90%. That negative state is what keeps us alive and well. It's actually what keeps the cells in the body alive and functioning. Anybody who is in the medical field will tell you that a typical healthy cell in the body has a charge of, say, minus 10 to about minus 50 to about minus 100 micrometers. But a cancerous cell has a charge of minus 10, sometimes down to minus 5 to about minus 10 or minus 10 to minus 15. So it loses about 90% of its charge. And whenever you get to that point, the cell starts to break and fork. Now we know cancer cells are rogue cells. People who suffer from depression often find that some of their worry and concern stems from their physical health. Dementia, Alzheimer's, an injury, just poor health, chronic fatigue and inflammation, called ME, so many other reasons physically that cause us to start worry, and that worry puts us in a repetitive mindset mentally, and therefore we suffer pain. So we understand that the body is always striving to be in a negative state. If, on the other hand, you push the body away from its negative pursuits or negative states charge pursuits, and it's more in a neutral or positive state, your body starts to break down, and therefore you suffer depression, anxiety, worry, doubt, poor health. And therefore, one of the key things to do if you're suffering from depression is to ensure you keep yourself in a negative state. You do so by a combination of the right food, what you eat, because that's how you generate energy, but also by exposure to light, because we also generate energy through light. And that light is converted into the water we have in our bodies, and through that process we generate more energy. The body actually starts to function like a battery, in the same way that we have a positive on one side and a negative on another side. And I say this very briefly: H2O separation, you create an exclusion zone. On one side you have the hydrogens that have been excluded, pushed away, and then you have the hydrogen and oxygen on the other side, and that exclusion zone increases or shrinks. Positive one side, negative on the other side, that's a charge. Effectively, you have a positive charge and a negative charge, and that's a battery. And so the way our body functions, and particularly most people have actually started to come into this understanding that even the heart doesn't necessarily support all the circulation of blood through the body, that light provides some support in that process. I won't go into that in today's session, but suffice it to say, easy water in the body, your exclusion zone water, or the fourth phase water in your body, is critical if you want to rid yourself of any form of depression. But also if you want to put yourself in a positive state physically, in order to be able to respond to the mental issues and the emotional, psychological issues that you and we, as a race, tend to contend with in life. The key question, therefore, is how do we build, how do we increase these exclusion zone water in our body, or fourth phase water? How do we charge our body in the right way? Number one, water. Raw water, or bulk water, or ordinary water is the essential raw material to build exclusion zone water. Simple. We drink water. You drink any water you can find. Ideally good, clean water. And that starts the raw material process. And when light comes in contact with that water in your body, you start to find that actually some of that bulk water converts to exclusion zone water, and vice versa, for the muscles and the cells in the body to function. The second is actually what we call green juicing. Most people understand this, but intuitively we can't explain how this plays a role. When we drink the juices from plants, we are drinking easy water. Now think about this, the body functions in the same manner as plants. Unlike plants, plants absorb radiant energy and they convert it to biological energy through a process we're familiar with, photosynthesis. The body doesn't do the same thing, but we apply the same mechanisms. The body absorbs light and converts some of that light into functional metabolic energy. But if you were to think about a plant that is sat there in the sun for most of the day and is absorbing all the energy from the incident radiation or infrared radiation, it means plants are charged with fourth phase water. Therefore, if you were to drink the juice of plants, you were drinking exclusion zone water directly. Your body doesn't have to convert it as a raw material will. So if you're down in fourth phase water in your body, if you drink green juices, you supplement yourself immediately. Most plants and some plants have a high concentration of water. We know cucumber, tomatoes, and a few more, cabbages, etc. These all have water. So if you eat these plants, you're actually consuming easy water directly. So you can go through a process of what we call green juicing. You take some of these plants and fruits and you blend them, and you have this liquid that is created, a juice, and you drink it. Plant cells create and help you revitalize the amount of easy water you have in your body. Number 3 is turmeric. Most people understand turmeric. We have turmeric receptors in the body, and therefore when we drink turmeric, the receptors we have in the body helps in the production of easy water. Coconut water is another one. Coconut oil, ghee, lard, all of these expand and create easy water in the body. Remember, what we are trying to do is not just create the easy water, we're trying to keep the zone expanded. And therefore, water as a raw material, green juicing as a support mechanism, turmeric, coconut water, coconut oil, ghee, lard, all expand the easy zone. Now the fourth is sunshine. Cheap and freely available, obviously depending on where you live. Sunshine builds easy water, primarily because most of the energy from the sun contains a rich proportion of infrared. The mistake we all make is we assume that we can only get infrared from the sun, or we have to buy infrared heaters to give us infrared. But think about this, if you've ever seen a movie, think about movies you've seen and action films, and you find there's an operation that is taking place at night, and the good guys, or the bad guys, whoever it is, who are looking to infiltrate the opposition's space, the first thing they tend to do if a building is being attacked or an area is they take out the power completely. In taking out the power, they put on infrared lens and glasses, and what you find is automatically they can see things eliminated. They can see human beings because we are simply energy and we radiate energy, and we all have infrared energy in ourselves, in our bodies. But everything radiates energy. This camera that I'm speaking to you on radiates energy. If I were to turn off all the lights in here and I gave you an infrared camera and you were in the same space as I am and you looked around, you would find the chairs, the table, the ceiling, the lights that are not on, radiate infrared energy. Infrared energy is everywhere. All you have to do is just open your mind and open your heart to receive. Now, yes, the sun builds easy water at a faster rate because it has a much higher concentration of incident radiation, but it's not exclusive to just the sun. And it doesn't have to be scorching. It just has to simply be infrared. Now the fifth, slightly controversial, CBD or THC. We understand the research is suggesting that it facilitates and it creates the building of easy water. I'll leave it at that without going into further details. You can do your research with regards to that. And the sixth will be sauna or heat. Think about this. In the sessions that followed previously, I made reference to the importance of, if you can, go into a sauna regularly and sit there for 15 minutes. And most people will tell you when people don't feel happy and when they feel miserable psychologically, when they feel unwell physically, they walk into a sauna and after 15 minutes they feel as though they've actually been charged. They have this zest for life. Some other people actually feel tired because the body's then saying, I want you to rest now. And once they've rested or slept, wake up the next morning, they feel wonderful. And I recommended in the sessions previously to use the sauna as regularly as you can. Part of the reason for that is because the sauna, any form of heat sauna, it could be infrared sauna, it doesn't have to be specifically infrared sauna. It could be a traditional sauna, it could be electric, it could be wood burning, but anything that produces heat will create infrared energy in your body and will create easy water. Just staying warm in a house will create infrared energy in your body, either through the metabolic process or just by virtue of the conversion process of heat to infrared. There's infrared in every one of us, and therefore that actually creates easy water. The steam room, the sauna, even a hot bath create a similar effect. Why? Because you're allowing heat into the body, and some of that heat is converted to infrared energy, and that energy, as it passes through the cells and tissues, comes in contact with that water that is in your body, in the cells, around the cells, and you create an expansion zone, an exclusion zone that grows, and therefore you build easy water. Now the final one, or perhaps the second to the final one, would be what I call earthing. Most people understand this. As a matter of fact, most people who are born poor understand this well, and that is for someone like myself who studied engineering and who studied electrical engineering as a subtext to my original engineering degree. You have sockets and you're told that the earth is neutral. I have come to realize and learn that the earth is actually negatively charged. And just by walking barefoot outside, you allow all of the energy that's been absorbed all through the day from the sun, bouncing around in the atmosphere, that is then absorbed into the soil, that is negatively charged, to charge your body. It will be the same as connecting a Tesla to a charging station. So here is a challenge. And I started doing this some time ago, and I can swear by this that it makes a huge difference. Yesterday I spoke to someone, a friend, and I'll share the recommendation I gave him. I said, spend about 5 or 10 minutes every day barefoot, outside, on the grass, on the concrete floor, walking on the sand, on the beach. But don't just sit there. You can sit in your garden and read a newspaper, and that's just as good. But walk. And think about it this way: if you were to sit in one location, and let's assume you agree with the idea that the soil surface is negatively charged, and you put your foot down, it means you're drawing on that energy, you're sucking on that energy. At some point, you've drawn a good quantity based on how large your feet might be. But if you walk, as you walk, you're touching and walking on new sections of the soil or the sand that still have fully charged negative energy, and therefore you're recharging your body continuously. And so, in speaking to someone yesterday, I suggested as follows: first thing in the morning, or in the evening, or whenever you can during the day, it might be your lunch break. Get to a park, walk to a park, take off your shoes and take off your socks. Place your shoes and your socks in one place and walk across the field. When you get to the end, walk back, put your shoes on and go. The reason I leave my shoes whenever I do this in one location is because I am not tempted by the inconvenience of other people's stairs to break my cycle. If you were to hold the shoes in your hand and as you walk down, you might find that people are looking at you, wondering what you are doing, and therefore you put your shoes back on. Or you might even find that maybe the ground is cold, and therefore you put your shoes back on. There's always a reason that we deviate from our goal. And by leaving the shoes in one location and walking to the other side, when I get to the other side, I know I have to get back to my shoes. And therefore I achieve the goal overall without any obstacles in the way. But earthing is a great way to charge the body, to get the amount of easy you want in the body, because the earth is negatively charged. You go to the beach and you lie down on the beach. Wonderful. You go out to the garden, or you just lay on the ground. And you allow all of the energy that's been absorbed from the universe, this abundance of energy we all have, that is stored in the soil, to go straight into your body, and it charges you up. Now let me finish and finalize today's session with the final recommendation, which is something called oxygen therapy. Least you think this is something strange. If you were to go to the NHS's website and type in go to Google and type in NHS oxygen therapy, it takes you to a page in the NHS, which I would imagine for it to be there means it's safe. It's been vetted, it's been reviewed. Oxygen therapy is simply a process whereby you either go into a chamber and the amount of oxygen is increased so that you're inhaling and that your body is absorbing more oxygen than you normally would. You can also get an oxygen cylinder and you inhale using a mask oxygen. Now, why is this important? Well, we go back to what I started with, where I talked about oxygen is negative, if you think about it. Hydrogen is positive. You have -2 for oxygen and +1 for hydrogen. If you were taking in oxygen, you are therefore increasing the negative charge in the body. You might say, providing more negative charge into your body, which facilitates and promotes the building of easy water. On the NHS's website, it states that oxygen therapy has been found to be very effective in curing so many illnesses. I mean, so many. If you have something as simple as asthma, not that asthma is simple to most people, and if you have serious medical issues, oxygen therapy has been shown to provide and facilitate quicker recoveries and better well-being for most people. Now, I have shared with you a number of ways to build easy water, which I know and I believe strongly can help anybody who's suffering from depression. Go through that list. You will find that there are some that require money. For example, buying an infrared heater. That means you pay capital cost, but you also pay an operating cost by virtue of your utility bills. You don't have to go through that process. You can get the energy for free from the sun and by just being out there or by walking. Turmeric and coconut oil and lard might be expensive if you do not have funds. That's okay. There are other ways. Amongst the 7 or 8 items I gave you, about half of them are free. Drinking water is free. Walking in the sun or sitting in the sun or basking in the sun is free. Earthing yourself and walking on the soil, laying on the beach is free. Green juicing, if you're able to find free fruits, cucumber, watermelon, lemons, all of these can be obtained at a very affordable price. The others might be expensive. Going to sauna, going to steam room, finding CBD and THC, they might be expensive, but 3 or 4 of the items I mentioned to make a huge difference. As a matter of fact, I would call this as a challenge to you. If you were suffering from any form of anxiety or depression, or worry, doubt, panic, also if you're suffering from, I say, chronic fatigue, inflammation, heart issues, asthma, anything you might be suffering from, let me set a challenge for you. Every day, just walk barefoot in your garden, in a park, on the beach, even on the street, on a concrete pavement, as long as you're walking barefoot on the concrete. Not in your home directly, because sometimes you're not getting as much absorption of incident radiation. But walk for 10 minutes every day. Start small, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. First task. Second task. If you can, go to the shops and get some turmeric and make yourself a turmeric latte or turmeric drink, just with water. If you can, sit outside and get maybe 5-10 minutes of sun every day, between 5 and 10 minutes. You may not be able to do it first thing in the morning, but if you work, midway through the day, just get out there and let the energy of the sun kiss you and bless you. And in about 3 weeks' time, come back and tell me how you feel. For those who are not aware of oxygen therapy, oxygen is very, very cheap. If you go to the NHS's website, go to nhs.org, I think, and just search oxygen therapy. They also provide distributors, people who can supply good oxygen. The NHS, not me, the NHS provides you with where you can get oxygen. So you can buy them in cylindrical bottles of 2 kilograms or 3 kilograms, and you can actually administer it at home. It's cheap, it's effective, it's powerful. The directions are provided on how to administer it. See, these are measures that can make life more meaningful. But here is the big thing. I learned many years ago that you should never leave the point of setting a goal without committing or doing something that pushes you in that direction. And so my call to action for you as I end today's session is, why not now? Why not you? You've got nothing to lose. Get a journal, mark the date when you start today, or whenever you listen to this, and keep track. And after 2 weeks, check back at yourself and see how you feel. I can almost guarantee this. If you were to go through 7 of the 10 or the 8 items I provided, you find that your life changes drastically. Most of them will be free. Sometimes it sounds too good to be true. Sometimes the best things in life are free. Now, I hope today's session has been useful.